Yeah, of course. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our live coverage of the latest mission from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. I'm Will Robinson Smith, reporter with Spaceflight Now. Good to have you with us here on this Wednesday evening, November 5th. We are broadcasting from the Spaceflight Now News Bureau here at NASA's Kennedy Space Center. I, however, am joining you from the road as I'm making my way back to Florida, but in the midst of a reporting trip on assignment, which we'll talk about a little bit later on in the broadcast and certainly the next one as well. But we have for you tonight a Space Coast doubleheader featuring launches from both United Launch Alliance on the left, SpaceX on the right. You're taking live looks at, respectively, Space Launch Complex 41 with United Launch Alliance's Atlas V in the 551 rocket configuration, set to launch a communications satellite from Viasat. On the right, you have SpaceX and its Falcon 9 rocket getting ready to depart with the Starlink 6-81 mission. As you can see the times on the screen, those are the countdown to the current liftoff for each respective rocket. First up, of course, is SpaceX with its batch of Starlink satellites, as you can see with the clocks, T-minus 54 minutes, 6 seconds, and counting. On the left-hand side of your screen, the Atlas V rocket is about 2.75 hours away from lifting off at the opening of the window tonight. ULA has more than half an hour set aside to launch the Viasat 3 F2 spacecraft, which, of course, will have live dedicated coverage to the Atlas V launch. So as we see some activity coming up with that rocket, we'll mention it lightly here on this broadcast, but for the most part, we'll be focusing on the activities related to the launch of SpaceX's Falcon 9 in this broadcast. Weather for both missions, though, looks quite good as SpaceX and ULA both have about 95% chance for favorable weather during their respective liftoff opportunities. SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket, of course, lifting off now just 53 minutes away. As we're getting things going, though, I want to thank you all for being with us here on a Wednesday night. So we've got a little more than 1,600 of you watching along with us live. If you haven't already, you could do us a big favor just by clicking the like button and sharing the stream, allowing some more folks to find their way into this live launch coverage. So we've also got our moderators here in the chat, Jeff Hansen, Astro Joe, Rick Donner. Appreciate you being with us to help us out with the broadcast this evening. You can help make the mod's job that much easier just by following the rules of the live chat. We ask that you post your message in English so that our mods can respond as appropriate. Also, that you hold off from delving into overt politics or religion, and don't use all caps in your message. Emojis are perfectly fine. We just ask that you don't create a huge block of them so it takes up a large chunk of the live chat here and other people can see their message and be digitally heard. And last but certainly not least, we ask that you treat each other with the kindness and respect that you yourself would like to be treated with, and we'll all get along swimmingly. Com check on Unity. Time now T minus 48 minutes, 40 seconds and counting. I want to thank our wonderful channel member community here on YouTube who make these live launch opportunities possible. Big thanks to folks like Craig RS, the Rocket Girl, Space Coast Steve, Sulfur for Lunch, and many, many others. Chris Chin, hello, hello. Channel membership comes with a number of perks, including discounts at our online shop, which is shop.spaceflightnow.com. Access to member-only videos here on YouTube, access to our members-only Discord server, and of course the ability to watch all of our live launch liftoff moments from here in Florida in 4K. Big thanks to our photography team who's out and about getting various angles on not only this launch, but of course the upcoming launch of the Atlas V rocket as well later on tonight. You can find them at their handles here on X. Adam is at ABurnNYC, Michael Kane at MD Kane Jr., John is at John Pisani Photo. Also, be sure to follow Spaceflight Now simply at Spaceflight Now. You can find us on Threads, Blue Sky, and Facebook as well if you're not on X. with about 45 and a half minutes remaining on the clock right now. It has been a busy day for SpaceX. If you were watching our dedicated stream yesterday, you may have noticed that the orbital launch mount has made its way from the Hangar X site there along Roberts Road at the Kennedy Space Center out to Launch Complex 39A. And earlier today, teams with SpaceX did hoist the mount and place it down on the plate above the flame trench. Let's go to a time-lapse video of that showing this process sped up quite a bit. This is about 100 times the normal speed of the operations. It was obviously very slow and methodical to get this piece of the Starship infrastructure in place for future launch use. As we wrap up on the placement portion of this video, as we're roughly 43 and a half minutes away from the planned liftoff of this Falcon 9 rocket from SpaceX. Coming up next will be the SpaceX launch director making the call on the start of prop load. That should happen in around T-minus 38 minutes, with fueling of the Falcon 9 beginning about 3 minutes after that. Also, would be remiss if we didn't mention that in addition to our regular rotation of photographers, we're also joined with tracking assistance tonight by our friends Pete Carstens with Max Q Productions, as well as Chuck and Jen Briggs with C&J Images. As we're getting towards the start of the fueling process, let's go ahead and talk about the countdown timeline, what folks should expect as SpaceX prepares to start tanking its Falcon 9 rocket there at Slick 40. Of course, things will get rolling, as I just mentioned, at about T-minus 38 minutes with the SpaceX launch director making the call on whether or not to proceed with the beginning of fueling the Falcon 9 rocket. Once that go-ahead is given, that process begins at T-minus 35 minutes with a loading of RP-1, which is a rocket-grade kerosene. That'll happen on board both the first and second stages. At the same time, liquid oxygen will begin to flow on board the rocket's booster. T-minus 30 minutes is when the first stage cryogenic helium load gets underway. Same will be true on the second stage a few minutes after that. Helium, of course, is important because it's used to pressurize the main propellant tanks during flight. T minus 23 minutes is when second stage RP1 loading concludes. T minus 20 minutes and 50 seconds is the start of the strong back chill down. SpaceX at this point in the count will be thermally conditioning the feed lines there at the pad prior to loading liquid oxygen on board the rocket's upper stage. We see this visually manifest as the big vent, which begins at about T minus 20 minutes and 20 seconds here at pad 40. Lasting just a little less than 4 minutes in duration, it'll wrap up about 30 seconds before the start of upper stage LOX load. Moving right along, T minus 7 minutes is when the chill down of the 9 Merlin engines begins. SpaceX will flow a small amount of liquid oxygen through the plumbing and turbo pumps, helping to protect those engines from the risk of thermal shock and damage during startup. 6 minutes out, the first stage kerosene tank should be full. Then at T minus 4.5 minutes is when the strong back retraction starts. SpaceX will open up the clamp arms just beneath the payload fairings, and then the transporter erector, otherwise referred to as the strong back, will recline a few degrees away from the Falcon 9 rocket, and it stays in that position until liftoff. Then at that point, it'll pull back in a much more rapid fashion to clear the way for the vertical climb of the Falcon 9. 3 minutes out, the first stage liquid oxygen tank is full. Same as true on the second stage, about a minute afterwards, which point the Falcon 9 rocket is fully loaded with 1 million pounds of propellant. In the final 60 seconds, as we hear the call that the Falcon 9 has entered into its automated startup, control of the countdown is handed over from the ground sequencer to the Falcon 9's onboard flight computers, and the propellant tanks are brought up to flight pressure. SpaceX launch director will then give their call that they are, in fact, go for launch. 45 seconds before takeoff, the engine ignition command is issued at T minus 3 seconds, and if all 9 Merlin engines are healthy and ignite as expected, the command will be given for the hold down clamps to release the Falcon 9 rocket for a T0 liftoff, currently targeting 8:31 p.m. Eastern, 01:31 UTC for those around the world. Time now T minus 35 minutes and counting. If everything is still proceeding on track for SpaceX, as it appears it is at the moment, teams are now just beginning the tanking process for the Falcon 9 rocket. Speaking of tanking processes just beginning, if we can swing back over to Slick 41, calling an audible for the guys in the booth. Within the last couple of minutes, per United Launch Alliance, the Atlas launch control is currently at T minus 2 hours, or L minus 2 hours and 30 minutes, or as you can see, about 27 minutes on the live clock. But the update just came in that they have come out of their first planned hold in the count and are getting started with the fueling process that happens live on launch day. At this point in the countdown, they are starting the chill down of the transfer lines to the Centaur upper stage's liquid oxygen system. So shortly there will be LOX flowing to the Centaur upper stage, as LOX is now presumably flowing onto the SpaceX Falcon 9 booster. The readiness poll for the start of fueling was conducted by the ULA launch conductor Ed Kitta and signed off in addition by ULA launch director James Whelan. Before they got into the flow of things today, they, of course, rolled the Atlas V out to the pad at Slick 41 and began the process by loading RP1, that rocket-grade kerosene, on board the rocket's booster. Still ahead for ULA, of course, is the loading of liquid oxygen and liquid hydrogen on board the Centaur upper stage and LOX on board the Atlas booster. As I mentioned earlier in the broadcast, this will have its own dedicated live stream as far as the Viasat 3 F2 mission itself. But since the countdown and the fueling process is happening simultaneously with the SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket, while there are relevant updates to provide to you, we'll go ahead and pop in with those periodically. But let's go ahead and push in closer to the Falcon 9 booster here and take a look, as we should start to see right about now some signs of a frost ring forming just beneath the X in SpaceX. Just under half an hour to go on the Falcon 9 rocket launch, and we are starting to see some of that vapor form near the base of the rocket, which indicates that SpaceX is in fact fueling its Falcon 9 rocket, locking into the current T0. With less than half an hour to go at this point in the count, SpaceX is also starting to load that cryogenic helium onto the pressure vessels for the Falcon 9's first stage. Same will be true on the second stage coming up here in the next few minutes. Time now T minus 25 minutes, 36 seconds and counting. As we're getting ready to see the start of the big vent, let's go ahead and talk briefly about the booster history for the Falcon 9 first stage that's set to launch tonight. This is B1094 in the SpaceX fleet, which is going to be flying for its 5th time. Its first flight was another batch of Starlink satellites, launching first on April 29th of this year, followed by a commercial or a private astronaut mission, that being the AX-4 flight, with the debut of the fifth and planned final Dragon to enter SpaceX fleet, named Grace. Grace was also the first Dragon vehicle to be formally named by a crew that was not a part of NASA's Commercial Crew Program. This booster supported another commercial crew mission, though. That was the Crew 11 flight back on August 1st. That quartet, of course, is still up on the International Space Station, having gotten a ride up to the orbiting outpost on Dragon Endeavour. They're set to remain on station until at least February, if not a little bit longer than that. Next up for the booster was NG-23, a Cygnus spacecraft that launched on September 14th of this year. And of course, that brings us to tonight's mission, the Starlink 6-81 flight. And here's a look at the booster turnaround times for these various missions. Tonight, of course, not the fastest that a Falcon 9 booster has gotten back into service. Nearly 2 months since the last time this particular first stage took flight. As we're getting ready to see the so-called big vent, want to thank the more than 3,300 of you who are watching along with us live tonight. If you haven't already, you could do us a big favor just by clicking that like button and sharing the stream, allowing some more folks to find their way into this live launch coverage. It's going to be a busy several days here around the Space Coast and beyond, in addition to the back-to-back missions that we have on tap for you tonight. There is also a scheduled launch coming up out at Vandenberg Space Force Base. That mission scheduled to launch on November 6th, flying with a window that opens up at 12:56 p.m. Pacific, 20:56 UTC. And as was just recently announced formally by Blue Origin, the NG-2, or the second flight of a New Glenn rocket, set to lift off from Launch Complex 36 with a pair of spacecraft that are part of NASA's Escapade mission. That's a Mars-bound flight, but while we're talking about celestial bodies around our solar system neighborhood, I want to take us out to our nearest neighbor. It's a perfectly full moon. In fact, tonight is a supermoon. Supermoon is a type of full moon that nearly coincides with the perigee, or the point that the moon is closest to Earth, so it appears a bit larger in the sky, about as large in the sky as we can expect to see it. So it's always a nice treat when this opportunity happens to collide with our launch coverage, and we have friends like Pete Carstens with Max Q Productions who can give us eyes on the moon. Oh, excuse me, this is our own John Pisani with our lunar look tonight. Just about 20 minutes, 35 seconds remaining on the clock for the Falcon 9 launch. Let's go ahead and bring things back full screen to the Falcon 9 as the big vent is about to begin here in roughly 5 seconds. And there's the start of that vent, which will last just shy of 4 minutes in duration. And as SpaceX is currently preparing to load liquid oxygen on board the rocket's upper stage, as luck would have it, right now, Centaur LOX loading on United Launch Alliance's Atlas V rocket has also begun within the last 7 or so minutes. Teams are loading roughly 4,150 gallons of liquid oxygen on the Centaur upper stage. Again, that process just now getting underway. Time now, T minus 17 minutes, 10 seconds and counting. The big vent is roughly 30 seconds from wrapping up here at Slick 40. Big vent wrapping up. Second stage lock load is now getting underway. Taking a quick peek at our live chat here. I want to thank Tim Carter for a $20 super chat. And apologies, Tim. The Laugh Factory is fresh out of jokes tonight. I'll have to come up with something later on, but certainly appreciate the very generous super chat. Also want to thank channel member Jamie Sitchell, aka JJ, for being a member with us now for 7 months at the pad leader level. Saying hi, how's everyone doing? Love the sound of the engines. Don't we all enjoy that rumble? Glenn and Luis Masser joining us with membership at the pad leader level. Welcome aboard, Glenn and Luis. Glad to have you with us. Thanks as well to Andre for the $10 super chat. And actually, we did hit your request asking to show the supermoon tonight, which, thanks to our John Pisani, we did tick that box for you. Also, thanks to Matthew Lowry for a very generous super chat, as well as Virginia Pruitt for a similarly generous super chat. Thank you so much, Virginia and Matthew. Really appreciate the support tonight. Thanks as well to Space Pony for gifting a Spaceflight Now membership. Generosity is always quite welcome, and welcome certainly to our newest gifted channel member. Glad to have you with us. Just under just under 13 minutes to go here on the launch of the Falcon 9 rocket here at Pad 40. Checking in on the split screen that we've got here tonight. Update on the progress for the ULA Atlas V on the left-hand side of your screen. We're roughly 2 hours ahead of that launch moving forward. About 20% of the Centaur LOX tank has been filled per ULA. The upper stage is powered by a single RL-10C1-1 engine, which will be fired 3 times before the Viasat 3 F2 spacecraft is delivered to a geosynchronous transfer orbit about 3.5 hours after liftoff. Time now T-minus 10 minutes, 7 seconds and counting to the launch of the Falcon 9 rocket. Before we go ahead and get pad level views of the launch vehicle, courtesy of SpaceX, let's talk a little bit about where it's going to be heading once it leaves the pad. Talking a little trajectory here tonight. Upon departure from Florida Space Coast, the Falcon 9 rocket will fly on a southeasterly trajectory, since this is part of the Group 6 batch of Starlink satellites. Following stage separation, the first stage booster, B-1094, will target a autonomous touchdown on the drone ship called Just Read the Instructions. If all goes well with tonight's booster recovery, this will be the 140th good landing on this particular drone ship and the 529th booster recovery for SpaceX to date. SpaceX is working to certify its first stage boosters for up to 40 flights apiece. Same is true with the payload fairings up top. So once they are jettisoned a few minutes into this mission, they will come back to the atmosphere and then safely splash down in the waters of the Atlantic Ocean under the support of steerable parachutes. This happens just a little bit downrange from where the booster is set to land on the drone ship. Once in the water, they'll be brought aboard a SpaceX recovery vessel, like the one you see pictured here on the screen, then brought through Port Canaveral off to the Hangar X site, where they will be examined, refurbished, and turned around for future missions. Just about 8 minutes to go before the planned launch of this Falcon 9. Coming up in about a minute will be the 9-engine chill at the base of the Falcon 9 booster. SpaceX flowing a small amount of liquid oxygen through the plumbing and turbo pumps, helping to protect those from the risk of thermal shock and damage during startup. We're going to keep our eyes on the Falcon 9 rocket, given that we are less than 10 minutes away from its planned liftoff. But just to give folks an update on what's happening at the next door neighbor with the ULA Atlas V rocket, less than 2 hours to the opening of the window for United Launch Alliance, the Centaur's liquid oxygen tank on the upper stage, that being the Centaur, it's about half full of the LOX, past the L-2 hour mark in the countdown, and ULA reports that tanking operations are proceeding nominally, and they are tracking towards the opening of their window today, looking for a liftoff at 10:24 p.m. Eastern, 03:24 UTC for our friends around the world. And again, as a reminder, we will have separate dedicated live coverage on the flight of the Atlas V and its Viasat 3 Flight 2 spacecraft. So don't go too far away once we wrap up coverage here on the Falcon 9 launch. Roughly 5.5 minutes to go here before the liftoff of this Falcon 9. At this point, the first stage RP-1 tank should be full. We should have live pad level views coming from SpaceX as well as mission audio. That should start here at about 10-ish seconds.
Instincts are pressing for strong back retract.
And as you just heard, we are getting that mission audio from SpaceX, as well as pad level views, which you can see here now.
Strong back retract has started.
Good call out there. Shortly, we'll be seeing the clamp arms just beneath the payload fairings opening up, and the large truss structure, currently parallel to the Falcon 9 rocket, the strong back, will recline a few degrees away from the launch vehicle. You can see a second of those arms now opening up. Saw a little bit of the first one. Hard to say with absolute certainty, but it looks like one half of the payload fairings may either be new or fairly lightly flown. The side of the vehicle that's facing away from the strong back. As I mentioned, SpaceX is looking to get up to 40 flights on these fairing halves across its Falcon fleet. T-minus 3 minutes and counting.
Stage 1 LOX load is complete.
And as you just heard, first stage LOX load is now done. We should hear a similar call regarding the upper stages liquid oxygen tank at around the T-minus 2 minute mark. Also want to thank channel member Jeff Quintrall for a $5 super chat. Some very kind words as well. Thank you, Jeff. Also want to thank the more than 11,000 of you who are watching along with us live tonight. If you haven't already, you could do us a big favor just by clicking the like button and sharing the stream. Allows more folks to find their way into this live launch coverage with just about 2 minutes remaining on the clock.
Stage 2 LOX load is complete.
With that good call, the Falcon 9 rocket is now fully loaded with 1 million pounds of propellant. Shortly, actually right now, seeing that venting from the strong back, that is the process known as ground gas closeouts.
Ground gas closeouts.
That call regarding the releasing of the remaining liquid oxygen there in the feed lines. Less than a minute and a half to go before the launch of this Falcon 9 rocket. Thanks to Mitchell Wilbur for a very generous $20 super chat saying, I love this stuff. I love seeing us tick down to the final minute of a countdown. The Falcon 9 will enter into its automated startup sequence.
Falcon 9 is in startup.
With that call, we are now just awaiting the SpaceX launch director to confirm that they are, in fact, go for launch.
Go for launch.
With that confirmation, we're now 40 seconds away from the liftoff of this Falcon 9 rocket. This is SpaceX's 141st of the year so far. "15 seconds. And here we go. In 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Engines ignition and liftoff. Liftoff of the Falcon 9 rocket. Falcon 9 has cleared the towers.
Vehicles pitching downrange.
M1D chamber pressure is nominal.
As you just heard, the vehicle passing through max Q, the point of greatest aerodynamic pressure on the rocket. With those Merlin engines now throttling back up, we're approaching MVAC chill,
MVAC chill.
which you just heard that good call out for. That is SpaceX thermally conditioning the Merlin vacuum engine on the rocket's upper stage, getting ready to begin its first burn. We're coming up to a few events in fairly rapid succession now. We'll see first stage main engine cutoff, or MECO, at about T plus 2 minutes and 24 seconds. That'll be followed by stage separation and then the ignition of that Merlin vacuum engine. The payload fairings will be jettisoned at about the 3-minute mark in this flight. And I must say, some great tracking work by our team tonight. Just a beautiful view of the Falcon 9. You see MECO?
Main engine cutoff.
Stage separation confirmed.
MVAC startup.
Good call outs, good visuals. Coming up next is fairing jettison. Less than 10 seconds. And there go the fairings in real time. Now, roughly 3.5 minutes into the flight so far, everything appears to be performing nominally on the Falcon 9 rocket. Coming up next will be the start of the 3-engine entry burn, beginning just a little bit past the 6-minute mark in the flight tonight. Falcon booster, as you can see with the telemetry data on your screen, is continuing its climb. That growl you heard just now was one of our wildlife friends here at the Merritt Island National Wildlife Refuge, one of the resident alligators. But don't worry, our crew is safely at a good distance from any amphibious friends that may want to make a cameo on a broadcast. Time now T plus 5 minutes, 37 seconds and counting. We're less than 30 seconds away from the start of the entry burn here. You can see the booster is making its descent currently, just about 80 kilometers above the Atlantic Ocean, making its way towards the drone ship called Just Read the Instructions.
Stage 1 FTS has saved.
Stage 1 entry burn startup.
Call for the start of the entry burn. Looks like photographers caught it, peeking between some clouds here. Should be wrapping up in the next few seconds. It's the end of the entry burn in real time.
Stage 1 entry burn shutdown.
And a good confirmation of shutdown by SpaceX. The landing burn is coming up next. However, it is too far away from Florida's Space Coast and too low to the horizon for our cameras to be able to capture. So we'll be relying on the SpaceX onboard cameras for this part of the mission. A little more than 7 minutes into the flight, the start of the single engine landing burn, less than a minute away now.
Stage 1 transonic.
The booster now traveling below the speed of sound. As we come up to the start of the landing burn, we should here recall that the Falcon 9 second stage has entered into terminal guidance. That just means that it's nearing the end of its burn.
Stage 1 landing burn. Stage 2 terminal guidance. Landing leg deploy. Stage 1 landing confirmed.
And a confirmation of touchdown of B-1094, completing its 5th trip to space and back.
And back shutdown.
Nominal orbit insertion.
Good confirmation of engine shutdown and a nominal orbit insertion. At this point, the upper stage will continue into its coast phase, which will last until about T plus 53 minutes and 53 seconds. There will be a short 2-second burn of the upper stage engine. And that'll set up the Starlink satellites to be deployed at T plus 1 hour, 5 minutes into the mission. And a good view of those Starlink satellites before we close out our views from SpaceX here tonight. 29 of these Starlink V2 mini optimized satellites are hitching a ride up to low Earth orbit on this mission. And with that, we're going to go ahead and turn next to our launch replays here. So actually, because of the upcoming launch, I misspoke there. We're going to go ahead and forego the replays on this mission as we're preparing for live coverage of the Atlas V rocket and the Viasat-3 F2 spacecraft set to launch in 1 hour, 42 minutes, 10 seconds. So we're going to wrap things up pretty quick here on our SpaceX Starlink mission coverage. So we'll go ahead and turn to our mission stats as they currently stand as we get those pulled up. I want to thank Trevor C. for a $5 super chat saying, great job, everybody. Thank you for all you do. Thank you for your support, Trevor. Thanks as well to channel member Chuck Close for a very generous $25 super chat. Thank you, Chuck. And to Buzz Lax, another channel member, for a $10 super chat. Thank you, Buzz. With a good liftoff and landing of the first stage booster tonight. That was the 5th launch and landing for B-1094, the SpaceX fleet. This was SpaceX's 558th Falcon 9 launch to date, the 141st of the year. This was the 493rd Falcon booster reflight, or the launch of a booster that has flown at least once. This was the company's 169th orbital launch within the last 365 days, the 290th from Pad 40, and the 345th overall launch from Pad 40 as well. Here's a look at where the bar chart currently stands for SpaceX. Moving right along to some recovery stats. That was the 140th good landing on the drone ship. Just read the instructions. The 432nd SpaceX drone ship landing and the 529th overall booster landing for SpaceX to date. Finally, with some industry stats, this was the 92nd orbital launch from Florida, the 148th from U.S. soil, the 162nd from a U.S. rocket company, and the 253rd orbital launch around the world. There have been 5 orbital mishaps. Here is where our pie chart currently stands, and where we stand right now, we've got 1 empty pad, 1 more rocket fueling up and raring to go. So we're going to go ahead and close things out with our live coverage here, but want to thank, of course, all the folks who've been involved with this stream. Thanks to our friends Chuck and Jen Briggs with C&J Images, to Pete Carstensen with Max Q Productions, our photographers John Pisani, Michael Kane, Adam Bernstein, our Spaceflight Now editor Stephen Young, and of course the Wildlife Refuge alligators who lent their wonderful gurgles to the broadcast ambiance. For all of us here at Spaceflight Now, I'm Will Robinson Smith. Remember, be good to yourselves, be good to others. We'll see you very soon over on the Atlas V live stream. And until then, bye-bye.